So today's Tactical Tuesday tip, I want to talk to you about toxic people and creating an environment for success for you, for your personal life, for your business, for your family. And we've all said it, we've all heard it, you know, either you've said it, you've heard your best friend say a million times, like, man, I just want to find someone, if we're talking about relationships, I just want to find someone without all the drama, someone who doesn't lie, cheat, and steal, and all this kind of stuff, just a normal person, right? And when we're going into business, we want to have a good business partner, someone who's reliable and accountable and trustworthy, right? When we go to find a new church or a place of worship, whatever your religion, right? You're just like, I want a pastor that I can trust and believe in, and a group of people that I can surround myself with that will help build me up and take me to new levels in my own spiritual growth, right? So there's all sorts of different categories we can put this into. And yes, if you're a believer like myself, I understand that we are not all perfect and we are all sinners and we are bound to sin and none of us are perfect. But there's a difference between a person who has faults and the toxic personalities I'm going to talk to you about very quickly today. So we're going to go in way more depth in this, and we're going to put a very big series together on this on the website, right? But today we're just going to do Cliff Notes version, right? So one of the things that's important to understand, which many people don't know very much about, and I've been studying this for years now, and I've dealt with these types of personalities multiple times throughout my life, and I didn't understand it, and maybe you didn't understand it. You're just like, man, I keep falling into this rhythm or this trap where I keep meeting people and having people in my life that take advantage of me and manipulate me and this and that. And whether, you know, from my personal experience, I've seen this happen to me in an intimate relationship where I've had a girlfriend that was cheating on me with people and she was cutting herself, and then you try to break up with her, or I would try to break up with her because of the things she did, and then next thing you know, she's trying to commit suicide and it's my fault because I was leaving her, right? And then I get guilt and shamed into running back and trying to take care of her so she doesn't hurt herself, etc. Maybe you've like, dude, I've never had a crazy girlfriend like that, right? But I've also been in business relationships with people who are kind of that cutthroat kind of person. And at first you're like, hey, maybe this is good to have someone in business because I'm not trying to be necessarily cutthroat like they are, but you know, maybe they're able to do the difficult things that, you know, it takes to run a business. And what you find is that at first you're like, oh man, they're on our side. They're going to do the hard lifting and take on those big challenges, and they're the right person for that job. But then you start to realize that this person is also, you know, stealing from the company. They're creating more drama within the company than solutions for the company. And that whole motto of the ends justify the means is turning out to be a detriment to the company because they're getting themselves in a lot of hot water, which then reflects back on the company, right? Or maybe you've had friends who you introduce to your other friends, and then they start creating all this drama and triangulating with all the people around you and start turning all your other friends against each other, and then ultimately turning them against you. So maybe you've experienced some of this stuff, maybe you haven't, but here's the deal. 1 in 7 people in this world fall into, and these are conservative numbers, 1 in 7 people fall into the psychopath category. And you're like, serial killers? 1 in 7 people are serial killers? When we hear psychopath, sociopath, right, these kind of words, we think of the extreme and we're thinking serial killers and stuff like that, right? But cluster B personalities, if you have not learned about cluster B personalities, right, sociopath, psychopath, borderline, you know, narcissistic, there's many more, right? If you haven't learned about cluster B personalities, I highly recommend you do some homework on this, or come and start training with us online where we're going to get deeper into this. But there's a lot of great resources. We'll put some of them below in the description here. But this is the thing. These personalities are master manipulators. And there's many of the people in our society, in the world, who were born this way or who developed through environmental circumstances have developed this lack of empathy, right? They cannot feel love. They don't understand what it is, right? They cannot truly have joy. So what they do is they find hosts. They find people like you and me, and they attach themselves to you, right? And they build up their self-worth through this relationship, through this attachment, right? With the idea or the game plan, and they can't even help doing it. It's a pattern. It's what they do. Eventually what they do is they start to take over the relationship, and they start to manipulate you and take advantage of you. And in the end, some of them are physically abusive, right? But most of this turns into an emotional abuse through guilt, shame, manipulation, and gaslighting and triangulation. If you're not familiar with gaslighting, right, I highly recommend you look up what gaslighting is. Okay, if you're not familiar with triangulation, look up what triangulation is. Right? Again, this is the short version. This is the Cliff Notes. I'm just trying to make this aware for you, right? So you can start to streamline your life, right? And we can't avoid or remove every person who's a cluster B personality from our life. Some of them maybe we're already married to them. Maybe it's a parent or a sibling. Maybe it's a coworker. So we might not be able to remove them from our life, but I highly recommend you learn about the patterns, about their method of operation, of how they attach themselves to a host, and how they start to do the idolization phase, into the manipulation phase, into the guilt and shaming phase, into the destruction phase, because they will walk through a lifetime and negatively impact many, many people along the way, leaving a wake of, destruction, emotional destruction in their path, sometimes physical destruction, financial destruction, spiritual destruction, right? And the whole time you're trying to think, how did this happen to me? And is it my fault, right? So when you start to understand the method of operation and the pattern and the rhythm of how these personalities operate, we can start to identify them in our lives earlier on before they can create a giant atmosphere of toxicity in our life, right? With this, we can also start to learn how to navigate these relationships if we can't get out of them, by setting up proper, boundaries, like personal boundaries, right? We can set up boundaries. We can also start to not buy into certain things or not get hooked into certain things that they're trying to do, ways they're trying to manipulate us, to get ahead, to get an advantage on us. And we can start to then streamline and simplify our life. Because if we understand the method of attack, then we can understand how we counter it. If we understand the method of attack, then we can identify it before the attack actually takes place. Almost like preventative medicine. So, there's wars in the world. Physical wars are easy to see. Two people fighting it out is easy to see. If someone's physically abusing you, it's easy to see. I'm not taking anything away from it, right? I'm not downplaying this. But there's something very important here. If someone gives you a black eye and you walk into work the next day and you have a black eye, you get validated when someone says, oh my gosh, what happened to you? How'd you get that black eye? And you might be embarrassed. You might want to defend them. You might think they're an asshole, right? Depending on, the level of manipulation you're under. So, but the physical abuse gets validated, right? Then we have spiritual warfare, the battle. Maybe you don't believe in this stuff, but there's a spiritual war, for your soul, good versus evil, right? So the spiritual warfare, we have an understanding of it through our churches or wherever you worship, and there's books and studying and all this kind of stuff. But there's psychological warfare that many people don't want to talk about. And this topic is extremely important, right? This is important because the psychological warfare, right, gaslighting and things like that, and guilting and shaming, the psychological warfare very rarely gets validated. And these cluster B personalities, what they will do through their psychological warfare is ahead of time, they are setting the stage for when you finally start to defend yourself, right? No one's going to believe you. You look like the guilty party for defending yourself, and they will convince everyone else through triangulation that you're actually the crazy one, coming back to gaslighting where you actually convince yourself, maybe I am crazy, right? But this is all a strategic game plan to take over and control your life. So I highly recommend on this Tactical Tuesday tip that you start to learn about cluster B personalities. Again, 1 in 7 people fall into this category. The majority of our prisons are filled with people with cluster B personalities. I'm not trying to be judgmental, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the majority of the people in Washington, D.C., Wall Street, in the legal system, politicians, right? Places of work where people go, the ends justify the means, that cutthroat type of business, right? How do politicians look you in the, you talk to a politician in person, you're like, oh my gosh, this person's so cool, they're so nice, I love this person. And they make all these promises and they never deliver. They lie straight to your face, not every single one, right? I'm generally speaking, but everyone kind of knows that the game of politics, right? And in Washington, D.C., where the headquarters of all the politics are, right, it's kind of like a badge of honor to be kind of ruthless, to do whatever it takes to get the job done, you know, because the ends justify the means. Those types of personalities, the people who think like that and don't have empathy and don't actually have any remorse for right or wrong or anything like that, these usually fall into that type of personality. And this is the thing. You are not as important. Your feelings, your life, the results, the wake of destruction on your life to those people means nothing, right? Because it's all about them. And as they destroy your life, they have no empathy, so they can't even feel and understand how hurt you are by what they've done to you. It makes no sense to them because they can't physically feel that, right? So this is important for us to understand. Through the proper education, we can start to learn how to identify these personality types and the patterns and the things that they do, the system and the rhythm and the process that they use to gain control of your life so they can manipulate you and get what they need out of you before moving on to the next host, right? It's extremely important for us to understand that, because as we start to develop personal relationships, as we take the time and our resources and our energy and our finances and try to build a business or try to support a business that is being built as a employee, right? Or as we're trying to build our spiritual life, you name it, you put whatever label on it or category that it is. We want to make sure that these people are kept in check, right? And that we don't give them that authority, we don't give them that opportunity to tear down and manipulate the things in our lives that we're putting so much time and energy into building. And your personal and emotional life, right? You fall into that category. This isn't just important for business. This isn't just important for society stuff. This is also important for you and your own personal development and your personal growth. So again, we're going to put some resources below. If you want, join us online at fullspectrumwarrior.us or fullspectrumwarriors.com, and we will go into deeper education on this. And again, we want to help empower you and build you as an individual. And one of the main things we can do is by streamlining the people who are in our lives, so that way we have the most productive people, the most inspiring and supportive people in our life, and not the people who underlying are trying to deceive and tear down everything that we're putting our time and energy into. So I hope that helps. I hope you do some research on this, and I hope you find some mental, spiritual, physical breakthroughs in this portion of your life.